Part 123. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yuzu. Chapter 1223. The man responded happily, and ran out to call for someone. Squatting around the inn are men who specialize in guiding and interpreting. They are all nearby villagers or people from the town. This was once the occupied area of Dajin, so they all know some golden language, and because they are related to the grassland recently, I often do some barter transactions with the people of those tribes, so I also know their languages, and it is not difficult to communicate with each other. This is also an income during the slack season, and it is not weaker than farming if it is done well. As soon as he saw a smiling man running out of the inn, a man shouted loudly, "Wen-san, your cousin is looking for you, and he must have found you another job." Everyone looked enviously at Wen-san, who was squatting on the ground. It would be great to have a cousin who works as a waiter in the inn. Wen-san immediately stood up when he heard the call, and limped to meet him quickly. The clerk pulled Wen-san and whispered, "Cousin, although this client is a bit stingy, but his overall demeanor is a bit different. If you put your heart into it, you might be able to develop into a long-term client. They are going out to practice. My son, it is estimated that the money given by the family is not enough." Wen-san nodded again and assured him repeatedly, "Don't worry, I will take good care of you." When Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang saw the two of them approaching, they looked away, and they stopped looking at the men squatting under the eaves or standing under the wall. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang didn't seem to notice that Wen-san's leg was lame, and nodded with a smile, "Let's go." The clerk was still a little nervous, nodded and bowed with a smile, and said, "Thank you, two young masters. Don't look at the little cousin who is lame, but his walking speed is not slower than others. If you have something to do, just let him walk running errands." As if to prove that his legs didn't interfere with his work, Wen-san took 2 quick steps forward, and said with a smile on his face, "Young masters, if you have something to do, just tell the younger ones are quite familiar with this place." Xiaobao nodded, and said as he walked out, "We just want to buy some local products such as for medicinal materials." Wen-san breathed a sigh of relief. This kind of thing is quite common in the market, and it's not hard to find. The marketplace is 200 or 300 paces to the east outside the city gate, and this inn is close to the city gate, so a group of people walk slowly. Although they have been here for 2 days, the two of them don't know enough about the important town, so they looked around curiously and asked Wen-san, "Are many of you here doing translators like you?" "It's a slack season, so there are a lot of people," Wen-san explained. "When the farming season is busy, only special farmers or people who don't have work in the field come." Xiaobao nodded and asked, "Can you all find a job?" Wen-san shook his head and sighed, "It's okay when the farming is busy. There are few people who rob. You may receive a customer in a day. At this time, there are many people who rob, and you may not be able to receive a customer in 3 to 5 days. Little bear, then you just squat there and wait? If you can't get the job, isn't it a waste of time? I'm resting when I go home. Maybe I can get a job here. As long as I get it, I will have money." Wen-san limped a step in front of the two of them, turned around and smiled, "We're pretty good. Well, those who can't even do this job can only wait for the job of loading, but the merchants always bring their buddies and bodyguards here, and they are even less used, not necessarily for 10 days and a half months waiting for work. The work is still tiring, and the wages are still low. After all, there are still too few sideline jobs. And because this is an important border town, there are a lot of businessmen traveling from south to north, so everyone can still do some scattered work, but in other places, they don't even have these opportunities. Isn't their life even more difficult? If only more people could have this opportunity." Little Treasure walked outside the city gate while thinking, and when he saw the questioning field not far away, Little Treasure couldn't help being taken aback. Even Little Bear stopped in his tracks. This is the first time for the two children to visit the border crossing. When they saw the people of all ethnic groups inside, they couldn't help being stunned. Before the two of them approached, they heard the noise coming from inside. There are really languages of all ethnic groups. And speak by shouting. The two listened attentively, and found that they didn't hear the golden language they were familiar with at all. They couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately they brought Venson. Wen-san, who was familiar with the way, led everyone into the market, pointed to the goods on the booth and introduced, "These are just a part, and they don't display some goods. Only after meeting a big buyer and confirming that the price can be sold, just take it out." Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang nodded, carefully observed the Yuan people in the discussion room, and asked, "Is there anyone from Yuanting here?" Wen-san paused, and said cautiously, "Young master, why do you ask this? This is Daki's discussion field, and there are no people from the Yuan court. Most of the people who will come to this discussion field are herdsmen on the grassland or representatives of the tribe." Thinking that this is his client after all, and that he has a good attitude towards him, Wen-san couldn't help reminding, "Dachi just fought with Da Yuan, and the relationship between the two sides is not very good. It is better for you to inquire less about Yuanting's affairs." "Is it because they are worried about their collusion with Yuanting?" Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang looked at each other, and said with a smile, "We are just asking curiously. After all, this is an important town of the imperial court, and there are so many merchants on the grassland, so it should be said that Daewon should also send people here. After all, the debate should be conducted by it was mediated and managed by both parties." Wen-san was slightly relieved, and explained, "Our Daki and Daewon have just finished the war, and the two sides have no contact. This discussion is still asked by our magistrate and the court. It is only counted as a private transaction, not a formal one, so there is no one from Yuanting." Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang nodded, then looked down at the goods on the stall. They only brought 3 cars, and kept one for themselves or something they took with them, and the rest could be used as vans. Because of the limited space, the two of them decided to bring all the medicinal materials and furs. These 2 things are easy to buy and carry in the Central Plains. The two of them squatted down to ask the price, and after walking around, they knew it by heart. Xiaobao said to Xiaoxiang in a low voice, "Wen-san said that the price of these things is nearly 20% higher than last year. It seems that the people of Daewon are having a hard time. It's a pity that we don't know their language, otherwise we can ask them about the situation in the grassland." Xiaoxiang glanced at the people in the field. The translation here is similar to that of Venson. 3 points are based on shouting, 7 points are based on gestures, and the price is negotiated. It's okay, it's impossible to really ask the other party's situation. They came here not only to do business, but more importantly, to learn more about the Yuan's situation. Xiaobao took Xiaoxiang to walk around the venue again, and then told Wen-san and the 2 guards, "We are short of time, the 3 of you go over there to see what happened, and we go this way." Wen-san was surprised, "Don't you need me to translate for you?" Xiaobao smiled and said, "No need, let's go shopping by ourselves, just take the 2 of them there." Such a situation is not uncommon. Wen-san thought about it and took 2 guards with him. Anyway, he only needed to obey the orders of the guests. Xiaobao then pulled Xiaoxiang and the rest of the guards to find the biggest stall in the market. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1224. This should be a stall belonging to a tribe or a caravan. Xiaobao judged from their personnel and the goods on the stall that they belonged to the largest stall in this area. With a mentality of giving it a try, the 2 ran to their booth and pulled up a piece of fox fur to ask the price in golden language. The stall owner only glanced at them and quoted a price in golden language. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang raised their eyebrows slightly. It was really feasible. They looked at each other, and began to pick up things seriously, picking up all the furs and medicinal materials they fancy, and asking the price once. The stall owner originally just let them choose, and had to deal with other customers. Seeing that they asked more and more questions, and seeing that there were so many guards behind them, he turned his attention to them, beckoned the two of them, and let them responsible for other guests. Satisfied with the situation, Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang began to select more carefully, with regret on their faces, and said in golden words, "It's a pity that you still have too few medicinal materials here. Although the fur is good, the quantity is also small." The stall owner glanced at the guards behind them and the clothes on the two of them, pondered for a while and said, "If you two intend to make it bigger, we still have some goods in hand." "Oh," Xiaobao asked enthusiastically, "I wonder if we can take a look." The stall owner stood up, pointed to the things that Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang had asked about the price, and said to his subordinates, "Keep these," then turned around and said to the two of them, "Please follow me." The stall owner took them into the cloth curtain at the back. Behind each large stall there was a place surrounded by the cloth curtain on three sides, and a cloth curtain hung from the opening. Enclosed space. At first, the two thought it was for them to rest, but now it seems that it is a place to discuss business. Little Bear asked curiously, "Why don't you just make a felt bag? People on the grassland carry felt bags with them, wouldn't it be better to do that?" "It doesn't rain today," the stall owner explained, "our lamp oil is very precious. The head of this four-sided curtain thing is empty, and it is bright and majestic when sitting in it, but if the felt bag is dark inside, you will have to light an oil lamp to see the goods. I don't know if this business will be successful. They don't need to spend such a big cost." Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang didn't expect them to say this, and it was both funny and sad for a moment. There were 5 or 6 large packages piled up inside, and the stall owner didn't even invite them to sit down, and directly pulled the packages over and opened them. 4 packages were all fur, and 2 were medicinal materials. The stall owner said, "These things are very expensive. Many people take them out to look at them, but few people buy them. But I think you have the ability. How about it? Do you want it?" Only 2 guards came in with Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang, while the others stayed outside, and the stall owner ignored them and looked directly at Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang. The 2 teenagers squatted down to look at the goods, and said while looking, "These furs are really good. We have seen many stalls before, and there are very few such goods. If I ask the price early in the morning to buy them, you should not hide them. Get up and put it out to see if anyone buys it." The stall owner snorted and said, "These are too expensive. Most Han people touch them, ask the price, and then leave. I'm annoyed." Xiaobao smiled and said, "It's about business. If the price is not suitable, you will give up. How much do you offer?" Stall holders quote one by one. Xiaobao said with a bitter face, "It is indeed too expensive." Little Bear also interjected, "This is different from the price quoted by my uncle. When did your uncle start this business?" Little Bear lied confidently, "The first 2 years. That's right, now the price has gone up. Then it's impossible to increase by nearly 30% all of a sudden, right? It wasn't that expensive 2 years ago when we were in war. Why is it getting more and more expensive now that we've settled down?" Both Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang showed dissatisfaction on their faces. The stall owner's expression was not good, and he snorted, "Do you think we are willing? Although there were wars in the past 2 years, there were still Daki's caravans that could enter the grasslands, tea and silks can be bought, and Jinting still has a lot of salt mines, so salt is not difficult to buy, but now that the war is over, Dajin is gone, but Daki's caravan no longer enters the grassland. When you go into the town to buy, each person is not allowed to buy more than 2 caddies of salt per day. The things you have packed are too expensive, and we have to raise the price." The stall owner saw that the 2 teenagers opened their mouths wide, they were in a slightly better mood, and their complexions softened slightly, and then said, "Besides, Our life on the grassland is not easy. The weather has changed rapidly in the past 2 years. Last winter, it was snowing heavily, and we didn't cut too many furs. There are quite a few, not to mention medicinal materials. What you are seeing now are the good products that our tribe has saved from last year. If you want more, I will give you a cheaper price. The stall owner lowered his voice and said, however, if you have tea, silk, or salt, we can also barter directly, and it will be cheaper then. Xiao Bao asked innocently, didn't it mean that only the imperial court can sell salt? The stall owner said in a low voice, the imperial court doesn't care about the amount of 1 or 2 caddies. Little Xiong was full of regret. Salt needs salt, so we didn't bring it, but we still have some tea and silk. The stall owner immediately cheered up. Although there was no salt, it would be nice to have tea and silk, so as not to take money to buy from Han stalls or shops. Those people's things are very expensive. Xiaobao immediately asked the guards to go back and bring back all the tea and silk that hadn't been sold yet. They continued to pick out the goods, asking the price, and quietly inquiring about the news on the grassland. The tribes on the grassland didn't feel much better because Daewon replaced Dajin. At the beginning, Wokuo cancelled a lot of exorbitant taxes, but within a few months they started to collect them again. In the final analysis, Qi Xiaoyuan and the others should be blamed. They captured Dajin's capital in advance and directly occupied Dajin's treasury. Daewon did not have the treasury left by Dajin, and was short of money for everything. There is no money to reward heroes, no money to appease the army, no money to help the victims, and Wokuo does not have a brother who can earn money and wholeheartedly help him, so he can only increase taxes. In addition, he also sent troops to attack Xixia. It's better for them to go to the battlefield than to keep them here and force yourself to reward them, right? So the people on the prairie don't have much sense of belonging to Daewon now. Their lives are miserable, and they are running around for their livelihood every day. Even so, God doesn't show favor. The severe drought and heavy snow on the prairie from time to time, although only in some areas, but the impact is also large. If there is a natural disaster in Daki, the imperial court will provide relief and reduce or exempt taxes, which is impossible in Daewon, so everyone can only move closer to Daki as much as possible, so the disputes along the border have arisen in this way. Although Dachi has a strong army, there is no need to fight with these people on the grassland every day, and directly set up a bargaining field for private transactions, so as to prevent them from forming a team to fight grassland when they have no tea, food, or salt. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1225. Xiaobao and the others exchanged tea and silk for some furs and medicinal materials, and paid for some goods with silver, and they also got a lot of news from the stall owner. Wen San came back with 2 guards, and the 3 of them also carried a lot of goods in their hands. In this way, the goods they had to prepare were almost half completed. Xiaobao was very satisfied with this, and brought them back to the inn happily. One of the guards gave Wen San a dime and said, "You are still here tomorrow to serve the servants, so go back." Wen San's eyes widened when he saw the silver. He thought it would be good to have 100 or so coins, but he didn't expect to get more than 1 tael of silver. The guard patted him on the shoulder and turned back to the inn. The atmosphere in the inn was a bit weird. The shopkeeper of the inn said to the guards with an apologetic face, "It's true that the inn can't find a room for a while, and all the guests who come here are distinguished guests. I only hope that the 2 young masters can spare 2 high-class rooms. Your rent is low. How about a 10%? The guards were displeased, and said with a dark face, "Do we seem to be short of money?" Yes, of course the young masters are not short of money, but I'm really sorry." The guard wanted to say more. Xiaoan said, "Okay, Let the two of them squeeze together. After finishing speaking, he and Xiao Xiang turned and went upstairs surrounded by the guards. The shopkeeper hurriedly bent over to express his thanks, and the Daywan businessman who was sitting on the side waiting for the result also nodded to Xiaobao. Xiaobao smiled back, and returned to his room without stopping. Little Xiang sneaked into Xiaobao's room, heaving a sigh of relief. "What's the matter?" Xiaobao asked, "You know them." At that time, as soon as Xiao Xiang entered the inn, he lowered his head and said nothing as soon as he swept his eyes, and secretly urged him to come up quickly, otherwise Xiaobao would not have given up the room to others so easily. Even if it's the room of the guards, you can't give it up casually. When you go out, the most fearful thing is that people will think they are easy to bully. But seeing Xiao Xiang so anxious and fearful, Xiaobao retreated so easily. At this time, the leader of the guards outside the house was also admonishing the guard who was talking to the shopkeeper, "You can't be too long-sighted. Didn't you see that the sun hid among us as soon as he entered the door? Are you still entangled with the shopkeeper's crooked? Isn't it just the two upper rooms, and we didn't ask us to let them all out?" The guard felt aggrieved. "Master just took 2 steps to the side, how can I guess that he is hiding from people with such small steps?" "Okay, stop talking nonsense, hurry up and find out the identities of those people, don't wait for the masters to ask and don't know anything." 4 guards were left to guard the gate, and the others dispersed with their goods. Little Bear didn't speak at all, just took out a pen, ink, and paper and wrote. "Xiaobao is curious, this is to prevent the wall from having heirs. Do those Daywan merchants really have special identities?" He leaned over to take a look, and when he saw the word Wokuo on the paper, his eyes widened. Little Xiang rolled up the paper and threw it into the incense burner to burn, and whispered, "If he sees my face, he will definitely recognize me." Little Treasure looked at Little Bear, who resembled his 4th uncle by half or half, and was speechless for a while. Anyone who has met 4th uncle, looking at Little Bear, anyone who is not an idiot can guess their relationship, and Wokuo has fought against 4th uncle face to face, and it is still his confidant, how could he not know him? Xiaobao now knows why the Little Bear is avoiding people. "Are you sure it's him?" Little Treasure whispered hesitantly. "This is Daki." He, the Emperor of the Great Yuan, ran to Daki. How desperate he was. Little Bear snorted and said, "He almost killed my father, how could I not know him? There is a portrait of him in my father's study, and he is at the top of my father's black list." Little Xiang was slightly excited when he said this, and said in a low voice, "You said that if I clicked him, wouldn't I avenge my father?" Xiaobao's eyes lit up, and he immediately pondered the feasibility of this matter, before shaking his head for a while and said, "Now they are fighting fiercely with Zixia, it's not good if he dies, let them fight for a few more years to see." Xiao Xiang curled his lips in disappointment, but he always listened to Xiao Bao's words, and only when he was disappointed, he began to think of countermeasures, but I don't know why he came to Daki in a subdued manner. Is it an enemy or a friend? If you want to make friends with him, you can submit your credentials openly and send envoys over. If you are sneaky like this, even if you don't have malicious intentions, you will definitely not have good intentions. Xiaobao snorted coldly. However, a gentleman does not stand in danger. Under the wall, he dared to come to Daki, which shows that he is not a gentleman. Then is it dangerous for us to come to the border town like this? Xiao Xiang asked in a low voice. Xiaobao patted him on the head. What are you thinking about? Of course we are gentlemen. Even if this is an important border town, it is also my territory in Daki. I am the prince, and it is my responsibility to investigate the people's sentiments. Well, it's my responsibility, but now I can't show up, Little Bear said distressedly. I can't just stay in the house and hide from them all the time. It's only weird if you really stay in the room. Xiao Bao looked at his younger brother's face and said decisively, you should put on makeup. But the shopkeeper and the guys in the store have all seen me. That's no problem. Since he crossed the border and came here, then our manpower is far from enough. I remember that the general guarding this town is a member of the UN family, Xiaobao said in a low voice. There is no need to doubt the loyalty of the UN family. That means they are going to expose their identities. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang looked at each other with excitement. Both of them wanted to know why Wo Kuo came to Daki's territory. At this time, Wo Kuo had just moved into the vacated upper room with his men, and he asked calmly, "Have you checked the identities of those people?" "I checked, it's just two merchants' children who took money from the family to go out to practice. It is said that the big merchants of the Han people like to do this. Before the children reach adulthood, they will be given a sum of money to let them go out to practice, so as to judge their ability." Wo Kuo paused while holding the teacup, and asked, "Are you sure they are the sons of merchants, and they are here to do business this time?" "Yes," his subordinates lowered their heads and reported, "they brought tea and satin this time, and most of them were sold to merchants in the town." "Do business like this?" Wo Kuo sneered, and said in a deep voice, "The two little milk babies need so many guards with knives to protect them? And their martial arts are not weak." Nahe, Wo Kuo's counselor, hurriedly said in a low voice, "Han people have many rules. It would be normal for these two people to come from the direct branch of a big business family." "Two people?" Wo Kuo frowned, and asked, "I only saw the handsome young man in the lead, but the taller man standing beside him didn't see his face clearly. Did you see it?" Several people looked at each other and shook their heads one after another. Wo Kuo frowned and said, "Try to find a way to see that person. We have come here at risk. We must not make mistakes. Now that you know the danger, why come here?" This is the mind of Nahe and his subordinates. However, looking at the powerful Lord, several people know that even if they say something, the Lord will not listen to it, and will be scolded in the end. Since Prime Minister Li left, the Emperor it is rare to listen to other people's opinions. The Reborn Wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1226. The guards took the prince's token and letters and went to guard the general's mansion. The general's mansion was fairly well guarded, but the guards in the palace were not vegetarian, so they took a lot of effort to sneak into Yuan Qing's study room. Yuan Qing stared wide-eyed at the seals and letters in front of him. His palms were sweating, and it took him a long time to find his voice. "You mean that His Royal Highness and Prince Rong's son are both in the town?" The guard nodded solemnly, and said, "You should have read the letter from the prince. The Emperor of Dayuan ran into our Daki." "Wait a minute," Yuan Qing swallowed, and hastily touched the letter to read again. Why didn't he see the words Emperor Dayuan just now? "Oh, Wo Kuo is here. Wo Kuo equals Great Yuan Emperor. This is a small town. Although it is a border fortress, there is no need for everyone to run here, right? What a small place here." Not knowing if it was too late to deliver the letter to his grandfather, Yuan Qing was sweating profusely on his forehead. The guards felt a little sympathetic when they saw it, but sharing the pain alone is not as good as sharing it with everyone. The Yuan family has always been loyal, and the guards all felt that telling Yuan Qing would do more good than harm. After all, there is one more person to share the risk for them, right? Yuan Qing swallowed 2 mouthfuls of saliva, immediately stood up and asked, "What does your highness mean?" "Take control of the shopkeeper and clerk of the inn we live in, find out their details. If the shopkeeper and clerk are willing to cooperate, then keep them. If not, find a way to replace them quietly, try not to attract attention, and then send someone to guard the inn to see what Wo Kuo and the others want to do." The guard thought for a while, and said, "The master seems to be giving these orders. It's not difficult to get someone to stare at the inn, but it's too difficult to control the shopkeeper and the staff." Yuan Qing couldn't help asking, "Why do you have to control them?" "Because Shizi is also in the inn. Our Shizi resembles the Wang Ye 6 to 7 times, so we have to do some disguise, and the shopkeeper and the staff in the inn have all seen Shizi. Yuan Qing heaved a sigh of relief. It turned out that this was the problem. It was so simple. He patted his chest and said, "You don't have to worry about this at all. I have a few soldiers who are proficient in camouflage. You can change your appearance without too much camouflage. See, those who have seen him will not feel that he has changed too much, but those who have not seen him will definitely not think of him as a similar person. Has the Emperor De Yuan seen his son?" No, the guard was sure of that. Yuan Qing became more confident. "I just need a portrait of the prince. I want to discuss this matter with the two young masters." The guards could not make up their minds, they could only ask the crown prince and the eldest son. Both Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang were very interested in this kind of camouflage, because it was difficult for Yuan Qing to appear in the inn, so they found a gap to sneak out of the inn and ran to the general's mansion. Yuan Qing entertained them in a remote small courtyard in the backyard, and the soldiers he mentioned also searched and brought them. The Yuan family fought against the Jin dynasty for more than 30 years, and there are countless subtle operations that have infiltrated the Jin kingdom. Among them, there are many people from the Jianghu who came to help them, and they inevitably learned some special skills. This kind of makeup technique belongs to one kind. It can completely change a person into another appearance, even parents can't recognize it. For example, a young man becomes an old woman. It can also make people still be the same person, but completely different, and this is the second type that Xiaoxiang uses now. It is to weaken the part that is similar to Qi Heiran, and strengthen the parts that are different from him, so that people who know him will know that he is still a little bear, but it will not make people think of Qi Heiran from his face. Xiao Bao drew a portrait of his fourth uncle and handed it to the two soldiers. The two soldiers simply smeared it on Xiaoxiang's face, trimmed his eyebrows, and said it was okay when he moved away. Xiao Bao looked Little Bear up and down for a moment, and asked, "That's all right? Why do I still think he looks like fourth uncle?" The soldier laughed and said, "That's because the two young masters are familiar with each other. The idea of father and son resemblance has been deeply ingrained, so they look alike, but to outsiders, this young master looks nothing like the person in the portrait." Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang looked at Yuan Qing suspiciously, and Yuan Qing immediately nodded and assured, "I don't look much like it now." Little Xiang rubbed his chin and said, "Looks like you only need to wander around in front of Wo Kuo to know. My dad treats him as a serious problem, and I think he must be very impressed with my dad." The guards wanted to stop him. "My lord, isn't this too risky?" Xiaoxiang waved his hand indifferently and said, "This is my daki, shouldn't it be the other party who is in danger?" "That's right, if the other party recognizes them, it's a big deal to capture or kill them, and then leave for Beijing immediately. General Yuan's 200,000 troops are in Dating Mansion, and it is only 3 days away from Dating Mansion, so it is very convenient." The guards were relieved and calmed down. Yuan Qing stared at them with wide eyes. Could it be that the bodyguards are so courageous now that they let the master take risks like this? Or are the guards in the palace just different, with such a strong psychological quality? The guards ignored Yuan Qing's gaze. If he ran with these two masters for a month, his psychological quality would also improve. There is no need to control the shopkeeper and the buddy, so the risk is lowered a bit. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang are very interested in the purpose of Wo Kuo's visit, and plan to go back to the inn to meet each other immediately. Yuan Qing followed them all the way to persuade them in a low voice. He felt that there was no need for the crown prince and the prince to take this risk. He really wanted to know whether it would be better to arrest them directly. "Thinking about it makes me excited. The leader of a country has become a prisoner, and De Qi doesn't know how much benefit he can get in exchange." But Xiaobao saw it very clearly, and said, "If you catch him, this pawn will die. If I were Day One, I would set up a new emperor and won't be controlled by others. So as long as we don't want to start a war with De Yuan, let's not touch him for the time being." Little Bear told him, "Send someone to keep an eye on them, be careful, don't let them find their tracks, if they run away, catch them again, but quietly, we can let it go when the time comes. You still want to release it after you catch it, Yuan Qing stared. Of course, if we don't let us go, who will benefit? His brother wants him to die quickly. Come on, don't follow us, Xiaobao said, it's not good to be seen. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang went back to the inn anxiously. Coincidentally, they met Wokuo and others having dinner downstairs. When they saw a group of people coming in, they looked up and met Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang's eyes. This time, Xiaoxiang, instead of hiding, he exchanged a frank look with Wokuo. Wokuo calmly nodded to the two of them, as if he didn't see any similarities between Xiaoxiang and Qi Heiran. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang walked over with a heart, and asked with a smile, I don't know if it's convenient to share a table here, brother. Wokuo's subordinates were secretly on guard. Wokuo glanced at the two teenagers and said with a smile, please sit down. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang sat down opposite him, and said with a smile, brother, is this a businessman from day one? The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1227. Wokuo felt very strange that the two teenagers called him Brother Taiwan, and he also had doubts about the identities of the two teenagers, so he was happy to talk to them to get more information. I am much older than the two boys now, if you don't mind, you can call me Uncle Najib. I didn't expect you to be able to go out to do business at such a young age. The Central Plains is indeed full of talents. It's also our first time to travel far, and we were ordered to come out to practice. Xiaobao changed the subject. Uncle Naji came from the grassland, so he must have brought a lot of furs and medicinal materials. I don't know if he plans to make a move in the town, or continue to go south. It was a little impolite to ask such a question in the first conversation, but Xiaobao did it frankly. Wokuo laughed twice, and said loudly, good boy, I just like talking to straightforward people like you. I'm going to transport it to the south, and I heard that the fur and medicinal materials there can be exchanged for more tea and silk. Xiaobao regretted slightly, I thought I could get some goods from the uncle, but the goods of my brother and I are still a little short. Wokuo said meaningfully, the most indispensable thing here is fur and medicinal materials. As long as you are patient, you will always buy enough. Little Xiong asked curiously, can people from day one go to the south of Daki? Wokuo's eyes dimmed, but he said with a smile on his face, as long as you can get the directions from the yamen. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang looked at him enviously, uncle will definitely make a lot of money by going south this time. The prices of our fur and medicinal materials in the south are not low. But here comes the question, who guides them? Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang looked at each other, and decided to ask Yuan Qing to investigate carefully when they went back. Fortunately, Yuan Qing was notified this time, otherwise they would have no way of investigating these things. After all, they are foreigners, and there is no power in the town did not understand. The three had a pleasant exchange and explored their relationship with each other. The purpose revealed by Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang was very simple. The two brothers planned to establish a long-term cooperative relationship with Wokuo. At that time, Wokuo would provide grasslands such as fur and medicinal materials on the grassland. Local products, while Xiaoan and the others exchanged tea and satin porcelain. Nahe didn't quite understand why the Lord said so much to these two teenagers. In his opinion, it was impossible for the two parties to really establish a business relationship, because their identities were false. Moreover, the two teenagers had limited abilities and could not meet the needs of day one. They only loaded 2 cars in one trip, and the benefits of cooperating with them outweighed the losses. But Wokuo said, these two young men are familiar with things in Jiangnan, and they are also familiar with the business and the prices of some things. They should be businessmen. The nobles in the Central Plains are somewhat dismissive of these things. Wokuo has known Li Zhang for more than 10 years, and learned a lot about the Han people from him. Wo Kuo is still very confident in his judgment on this point. Nahe was taken aback. The reason why the Lord talked with them so much is to test their identities. This is just one of them, Wo Kuo said, sitting cross-legged on the bed. The more I talk with them, the more I want to cooperate with them. Nahe, we are too short of money. But they are just 2 teenagers. That's right, 2 young men from the direct branch of the family with their backs. Wo Kuo smiled. As long as we manage well, we might be able to establish a relationship with the big family behind them, and then we can trade tea and satin, even salt. It's not impossible. Nahe was silent for a moment, and said in a low voice, Master, these things can be left to the people below. You are the king, so you shouldn't take such risks. You think I'm here just to do business? Wo Kuo shook his head slightly and said, I'm here to stabilize the morale of the army, and you'll understand after a while. Nahe didn't know what the relationship between running to Daki and stabilizing the army was. He only knew that as a king, he should cherish his own life and not put himself in danger. This staff member is still conscientious, and he is confident that he can be a king's staff member, but now it seems that he is too far behind, and he doesn't know what the emperor is thinking along the way. Wo Kuo was staring at the night outside in a daze. Stabilizing the morale of the army is not something that can be done overnight. Now Day 1 is full of various problems, which seems to be a mess, but in the final analysis, the reason is just 2 words, no money. No money to pay the army, no money to reward heroes, no money to appease the tribal herdsmen, no money to build the great UN palace. Sending troops to Xixia can be delayed for a while, but not for a long time. The soldiers will be exhausted after fighting for a long time, and his brothers are still eyeing him. He can't relax at all, so he can only get more money the fastest. Dajin's treasury was occupied by Daki, and Daewon was so poor that even the richest tribe could not compare to a middle county in Daki, and Xixia was also bitterly cold, so he could only focus on Daki. Dachi has strong soldiers and strong horses. Chi Ziyuan brothers are not vegetarians. Wo Kuo dare not make too much action, and after Li Zhang betrayed him, Wo Kuo dare not trust his subordinates easily. So this time he came to Daki to dig gold, so he came in person. That's right, digging for gold and silver. He didn't dare to rob Daki's people to cause a war, but he could secretly mine Daki's gold and silver mines. This large piece of land was occupied by him for a long time. When besieging the capital city of Dajin, he confidently told the soldiers that he would be able to capture the capital first, but in private, he could not fail to do so. Future plans: destroy all the maps of Dajin's gold mines and silver mines, kill all the people in the mines, and secretly leave some people behind. Even if one day he fails and has to leave this land, he still has the power to fight back. Wo Kuo's original intention was that if he couldn't get Chi Ziyuan, he wouldn't even think about getting it, and he would leave some of his subordinates inside to add obstacles to him from time to time. Even being bandits could make the Chi family brothers unhappy for a while. Wo Kuo didn't expect that there would be so many problems in his kingdom, forcing him to use these 2 chess pieces in advance. He was in urgent need of money. And what is more profitable than directly mining gold and silver mines? Fortunately, Daki and Daewon haven't been completely closed, and the 2 sides can still trade. With money, he can buy a lot of grain and salt from Daki. Then do some business with the big businessmen of Daki in private. Wo Kuo believes that as long as he has money, Daewon will get better and more stable. Wo Kuo's mind is full of money now, and Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiong's minds are full of Wo Kuo now. The 2 of them lay together and whispered for a long time, but they couldn't guess why he came all the way to Daki. The biggest possibility is to spy on the military situation, but this seems to be something that can be done carefully. As the emperor, will Wo Kuo come in person? If this is really the case, the great UN will not last long. After the 2 brothers muttered for a long time, Xiao Xiong said in a daze, Then should you tell uncle and my father about this? Ah, I forgot to send a letter of safety to my family. Xiao Bao got up and said angrily, I was too busy to play, and I forgot to use the post station to send a letter of safety. Little Xiong waved his hand indifferently and said, what's the matter? Didn't we just let the carrier pigeon go back the day before yesterday? The letter wrote about our arrival here. Uncle and the others knew we were safe after they received it. Xiao Bao felt relieved, then write a safety letter tomorrow and send it back to the station. At this time, in the imperial palace of the capital, Qi Ziyuan was walking back and forth with his brows tightly frowned. Qi Heiran said, the post station didn't come back, even the carrier pigeon didn't come back. Where did these two brats go? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1228. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang quickly bought enough goods for 2 cars, and asked the guards to pack up and leave on the day Wo Kuo was about to leave the inn. The 2 teams happened to meet at the entrance of the inn, and Xiaobao looked at Wo Kuo and the others in surprise. It's a coincidence, you are also leaving today. Although Wo Kuo wanted to cooperate with the 2 teenagers, he didn't want to cause trouble at this time, so he nodded slightly coldly. Xiaobao didn't mind either. He glanced at their motorcade and said with a smile, it's a pity we don't go the same way, otherwise it would be safer to go all the way, and I can also ask Uncle Najib about his riding skills. Heartbroken, Wo Kuo asked, where are you going? Our goods are ready, so go directly to Jiangnan. There are many paths back to Jiangnan. I don't know which one you take. Xiaobao took it for granted, of course, go west to Taiyuan, where the official roads are well established and there are fewer bandits. From here to Taiyuan, we had to go through Weizhou, and the gold and silver mines he had chosen were near Weizhou. It was a coincidence that he went on the same road with these 2 young men. Wo Kuo was suspicious, and couldn't help being suspicious of this coincidence, so he didn't tell the young man that he would also take the road of Weizhou. Xiaobao didn't ask any questions, just cupped his fists to bid farewell to the other party and led them towards the city gate. Yuan Qing said that Wo Kuo's Liuyan was going to Weizhou, so he would go with them. He didn't mind waiting for them at the gate of the city in advance. Wo Kuo spent a lot of gold and silver to get the road guide under the pretext of being a businessman, so the team loaded a lot of furs and medicinal materials. There are a lot of goods, so there are naturally a lot of people to bring, so the speed is also slow. Xiaobao and the others have traveled a long way and they haven't been able to set off yet. Seeing the disappearance of the young man's convoy, Wo Kuo let go of the doubts that had just arisen in his heart. Maybe everything is a coincidence. Then he saw a young man who had set off nearly a quarter of an hour earlier than them at the gate of the city. Xiaobao seemed surprised too, he didn't expect to meet Wo Kuo again, so he rode up and smiled and said, Uncle Najib also came out from the city gate. Wo Kuo twitched the corners of his mouth, what else could he do besides nodding? That's really great. There is only one official road to Taiyuan in the city gate. Are you going to Taiyuan too? No, Wo Kuo said in a deep voice, we have to go to Weizhou first. Whether we can go to Taiyuan depends on whether we can get a road guide. We Day One people have to change a road guide every time we go to a place. Then we can travel together for a while. I don't know if Uncle Najib is traveling with us. These are caravans traveling with us. Wo Kuo scanned the past and saw 4 or 5 caravans. He was slightly surprised, so many people are going to Taiyuan. Some go to Guangzhou, some go back to the south of the Yangtze River like me, and some go further south. Anyway, they all go through Taiyuan. Because this section of the road is not very peaceful, the caravans have always been used to traveling together. In order to take care, isn't Uncle Najib with us? Wokuo smiled and said, I am from day one, I am afraid that other caravans will not be willing to go with me. But Xiaobao smiled and said, businessmen don't pay much attention to these things. Besides, we are here to trade with day one people, and we don't see any ideas from everyone. In the eyes of businessmen, there are only people who can cooperate and who cannot cooperate. Oh, Wokuo looked into Xiaobao's eyes and asked, then I don't know if I am a cooperating person or a non-cooperating person in the eyes of Mr. Qi. Xiaobao touched the BMW under him and said, the one who can bring me benefits is naturally the one who can cooperate. The two of them looked at each other calmly and smiled, and the little bear behind Xiaobao's head hurts, so he just said that you want to work together, why bother to test so much? Wokuo wanted to collude with Xiaobao, but Xiaobao didn't want to, so he glanced at Xiaoxiang and returned to the caravan with a little pride. In the end, Wokuo didn't go with them, but followed them at a distance. He had a secret and didn't want to be among a group of Han people. Xiaobao didn't mind, anyway, they would not be far away from each other, he was very patient and willing to wait for the other party to act. They failed to reach the lodging place in the evening, so they had to stay in the wild. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang have never been the ones who wronged themselves, even if they are in the wild, they can hunt wild animals to eat fresh. Of course, Bear and the guards were in charge of fighting, and he was in charge of eating. Seeing that the people at Wokuo didn't dare to leave the convoy and Wokuo half a step away, they couldn't help laughing with Xiaoxiang in a low voice, I'm afraid he won't be able to sleep well before he arrives in Weizhou. Little Bear buried his head in the grilled chicken and asked, have you thought about what to do? Let's see what my father means, Xiaobao said carefully because he was away, I wrote to ask for advice last night, so if you hurry up, you should get a reply soon. This time, because the matter involved confidentiality, Yuan Qing dispatched 600 miles to expedite it. Little Bear raised his head and blinked, and asked, then what do you mean? Xiaobao lowered his head and smiled lightly, what I mean is naturally what you mean. Little Xiang chuckled, rubbed his fists, and said in a low voice, I've already achieved some success in Kung Fu, and I don't think I'll be weaker than him. Wokuo didn't know that he was being targeted, and was whispering to his staff, let everyone be careful, don't arouse the suspicion of the Han people, try to slow down tomorrow, let them go farther, and put a distance between us. There was a group of Han Chinese in front of him, and Wokuo was still very uneasy. Nahe should go down. However, things backfired. The next day they opened up the distance, but on the third day they caught up again. Day 1 warriors, Lord, we swear on our lives, we really went as slowly as we could along the way, who knows if we still catch up, is the other party crawling by a turtle? The warriors came to the conclusion, the Han people are so boring. Wokuo's face was a bit ugly, Nahe took the initiative to talk to Xiaobao, and only then did he know the reason for their slow speed, and hurried back to report to Wokuo, my lord, a caravan clashed with the innkeeper where they were staying. So it was delayed for a long time before we catch up. Wokuo frowned, no tricks? The inn opens its doors to welcome guests and generate wealth. These caravans will also adhere to the principle that one thing more is worse than one thing less. How can there be conflicts? It was indeed an accident, Nahe explained helplessly to the Lord's suspicion, the guests staying at the inn stole some goods from a caravan, and they would not have discovered it because there were not many things missing, but it happened that the caravan there was something wrong with the axle of the truck. When it was repaired, it was necessary to move the goods down to find out the clues. Because they didn't know who stole it, the caravan made the inn lose money, and the inn finally reported to the official. They set off after noon. So even though they slowed down, they still met. Nahe looked at Wokuo, and couldn't help asking in a low voice, if the Lord is worried about these Han people, we might as well take another road. Even if the trail is not as smooth as the official road, there are fewer people and the chance of leaking secrets is lower. Wokuo is thoughtful. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1229. As soon as Wokuo's caravan changed its route, Xiaobao knew it. He beckoned to the two people in the caravan next to him and asked, "Is there a small road leading to Weizhu near here?" "Yes, there are several. We are guarding here, so we have a thorough understanding of the vicinity. Even if they take the trail, we can intercept them from the front." Satisfied, Xiaobao ordered, "Then select 4 scouts with good skills to follow up, and we will intercept them from the front." After Xiaobao and the others left, he asked Little Bear, "Now we are a certain distance away from the border. If you do it, how sure are you that you will be able to catch Wokuo?" Xiaoxiang calculated the number of his own team and the number of the opponent, and said, 80%, we have more people than them. Although the opponent's bodyguards were more than theirs, Yuan Qing arranged for them a lot of people, and they all followed several caravans as bodyguards, and he could call them at any time. However, Wokuo's horse is not bad. If something happens, his guards will definitely try their best to protect him and escape, so the possibility of the other party's escape cannot be ruled out. Then wait, if we can't find out why he came to Daki, we will do it. Then what if he has assistance in Daki? The guards felt that this move was too dangerous, and persuaded the two young masters one after another, "I think it's better to leave this matter to Yuan Qing. Little Xiang despises them, he has assistants in Daki, don't tell me his assistants are more powerful than Xiao's." "That's right, among other things, the state garrison dares not obey Wengu orders. I'm still afraid that he has assistants on my Daki's territory. We are just afraid that if he doesn't transfer his assistants, we can take down his people in one fell swoop." The two of them settled the matter with one sentence. The guards have nothing to say, they can only follow closely beside the two masters, they only hope that they can return to the capital safely, complete this task smoothly, and they will not come out with the prince and the prince next time they are killed. It is too challenging. Is there any wood? Wokuo's people were arranged in the mountains outside Weizhu city. One group occupied the gold mine, and the other group occupied the silver mine. Buying food in the city, he has never robbed anyone. The prefect of Weizhu city still does not know that these two groups exist outside the city. And when Wokuo occupied the area from Tokyo to Zhongdu last year, he drew the surveyed gold and silver mines on a map, and then killed all the miners inside, even the local officials who knew about them. So the new prefect didn't know that there were 2 gold mines and silver mines with large reserves under his jurisdiction. At the beginning, Wokuo arranged people here because it was the closest to the grassland. If one day this place is really taken, this is the easiest place to reach. The war last year was too fierce. Dajin fought Daewon, Daki fought Dajin, and then Daki fought Daewon again, so it is not surprising how many people died. Now the population of Weizhu city is small, and the official most of the caravans are coming and going on the road, but there is no one on the trail, not even a living village. Wokuo and the others could only find an abandoned village to settle down. Looking at the dilapidated small village, Nahe couldn't help sighing slightly when he thought of the tragic war last year. He didn't want to see the war again, so the Lord must return safely. Go to the grassland, otherwise Daewon will be in chaos again. Even if you lose your life, let the Lord return to the grassland safely. Wokuo didn't know that his staff were ready to sacrifice for him, so he just spread out the map and looked at it, and then said excitedly, "We are not far from our destination, and we can turn into the mountains to meet them tomorrow." Nahe took the opportunity to ask, "Why did your lord come to Daki this time?" "For money," thinking of going into the mountains tomorrow to meet his confidant before, he didn't hide anything. Nahe opened his mouth wide and couldn't help asking, "How dare the Lord guarantee their loyalty?" Of course they are loyal. Their parents, wives, and children are all in Daewon. Even for them, they will try their best to be loyal to me. This is his way of retreat, How could Wokuo not make arrangements? The people left behind were not only his confidants who were very loyal to him, but also parents, wives, children, or brothers and sisters on the grassland. As long as their families are still in Daewon, these people cannot betray him. Wokuo and his men turned into the mountain at noon the next day. At this time, Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang also settled in a relatively large village. Seeing that they were not far from Weizhou city, the caravan that cooperated with them asked to leave one after another, but the guards went to stop them. It's better for these people to stay with them while things are not over. After nightfall, Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang received the news sent back by the scouts, and both of them couldn't help but stare. You said it was a gold mine. Yes, there are quite a few people in the gold mine. We can't tell the exact number of people. We dare not get too close because of their tight defense. We can only hide on the mountainside to watch the situation. Little Xiong frowned. Even if it's a gold mine, the emperor of Yuan dynasty doesn't need to come in person, isn't it just a gold mine? Just send his men. Xiaobao's thoughts changed, unless Wokuo has no one he can trust. But he is the founding emperor, how could he not have someone he trusts? Ordinarily, the founding emperor had the most confidants, right? Isn't there all kinds of heroes? It should be said that he doesn't trust people other than him. Little Bear sympathized, it's so pitiful. Okay, don't sympathize with him, think about what to do. The number of people in the gold mine is unknown, how sure are you? He is the emperor, so it is impossible to stay in it all the time, and here is Daki, so he can't bring more people with him when he leaves. We will wait for him to come out before we do anything. As for the people in the gold mine, Yuan King Li can't do anything, it's a little far away, let General Yuan send troops to suppress it. The dating mansion guarded by General Yuan is only 2 days away from here, but there are 200,000 troops, and dealing with a gold mine is like crushing an ant to death. Little Treasure has always listened to Xiao Xiong about safety and war, and nodded and said, okay, I will listen to you. Wokuo took a few carts of furs and medicinal materials up the mountain, but lost most of the goods when he came down. He stole a lot of gold in the middle, and there were furs and medicinal materials on the surface. He has already made an agreement with his confidants guarding here that after he opens up the trade route from Weizhou to the grassland, gold and silver will be transported to Daewon through this dark line. Wokuo went down the mountain contentedly, and said to Nahe, let's go to Weizhou city to rest for a day, and change the way back by the way, and look for the silver mine on the return journey. My lord, it's too dangerous to bring so much gold into the city. The Han people have a very good saying that the most dangerous place is the safest place, not to mention that we need to find an excuse to sell the goods in our hands. If we don't even enter Weizhou city, who will believe that we put things sold for gold and silver? But how do we transport so much gold and silver out? This is one of the reasons why we had to enter Weizhou city. We went to the grain store to buy some grain, and then hid the gold in the grain bags. The grasslands lack grain, and the Han people will not doubt it. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1230. Seeing Wokuo walking towards Weizhou city after going down the mountain, Xiaobao hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should see what he had to do again. Xiaobao took a look at the little bear on the horse, and finally gritted his teeth and said, Duan will continue to be disturbed by it, and they will be captured as soon as they enter the city, and no one is allowed to get lost. Little Xiong also agreed with this, saying, the master is in our hands, are we afraid that they won't confess? Now that they know they are here for money, it's easy to interrogate. Xiaobao is not good at martial arts, for his safety, he was directly escorted to the government office by the guards to protect him, while Xiao Xiong took the rest of the people to ambush in the city. Weizhou city was as deserted as ever, except for some common people and passing caravans, there were almost no people there, so Wokuo and the others could make their way into the city as soon as they arrived at the gate of the city. Perhaps it was because most of the caravans passing through here were fur and medicinal materials business, so the guards at the gate of the city only briefly inspected their goods and waved them through. Nahe took the return route and made friends with Wokuo before entering the city. As soon as he entered the city gate, he could see the scene in the city. Wokuo saw that there were few pedestrians in the city, and there were a few stalls scattered beside him. Even the stall owners were lazy, so he couldn't help being alert. Wokuo glanced at Nahe. Nahe casually asked the soldiers guarding the city in Chinese, "Why are there so few people at the gate of the city? Last time I came here, I remembered that there were many people doing business here." "You came here before the war, right?" the guard said. "Weizhou city has been like this since I came here. We don't have many people here. Last year when Dajin and Daywan fought, this strong man was arrested. 7 out of 10 go to the army, and the rest of them were killed by the Daywan soldiers who rushed over. Even if they wanted people, there were no people, but the situation here is not good. If you go in, there will be more people." Nahe gratefully gave him a dime. The guard glanced at him, then looked at their convoy, and lowered his voice to remind, "It is impossible for you to sell the goods here. No one in Weizhou city has this ability, but there is a lefa shop in the center of the city, the inn. The people who live there are all big businessmen, maybe they will take a fancy to your goods." Nahe thanked again gratefully, and then returned to Wokuo to report. Knowing that it was not an accident, Wokuo was slightly relieved, and walked towards the city vigilantly with others. Not long after the people left, a horse came galloping, and the city gate was immediately put under martial law. Only entering and not exiting was allowed. Standing at the window on the second floor of the tea house, Xiao Xiang watched the convoy approaching slowly, and ordered the guards around him, "Leave Wokuo and Nahe alive, and catch others if they can, and kill if they can't." The guards responded in a low voice, and went to order the people sent by Yuan Sheng. Those sent by Yuan Sheng were veterans of the Yuan family army who had experienced many battles. Among them, the one with the smallest official position was also the general banner. They were also different from Chi Heiran, who jumped up to the general banner as soon as he came up. They really went from soldiers to the general banner. Knowing what to ask and what not to be curious about, so although they were curious about each other's identity, they still didn't ask a single word at this time. Knowing that the opponent is the elite of Day 1, they all made preparations to fight recklessly. The guards let them go down and guarded the bear closely. Wokuo rode on his horse and looked at the stalls on both sides of the road. This is already the center of Weizhou city, but there are still very few pedestrians passing by, and there are very few stalls on both sides of the road. Wokuo couldn't help but feel complacent. It seems that Daki also has a lot of problems, but such a big place has no prime timers. Wokuo smiled, raised his head slightly, and saw the little bear standing in front of the window looking at him at a glance. The little bear grinned happily at him and shouted loudly, "Uncle Najib, what a coincidence, I didn't expect us to meet again." The sound was like a bell. Wokuo's heart tightened. His intuition was wrong, and he was about to order to evacuate, but the person in front of the window came quickly like a flying swallow. A white light flashed in front of his eyes. Wokuo subconsciously fell back to avoid the little bear's attack sword. Seeing that his master was assassinated, Wokuo's guard hurriedly raised his knife to stop him, but was stopped by the guards who followed, and a group of people rushed out from the roadside tea house in an instant to stop the people of Wokuo's motorcade. The vendors and passers-by on the road immediately dropped their things and fled out, not at all like old and weak women and children. No way, it's not been a year since the end of the war, and the ability to escape has not been forgotten. But Yuan Jiajin and the guards subconsciously shielded them from the knife and let them escape quickly. When Nahe wanted to catch the hostages, all the people on the road had already fled, and only a group of fighting people like them were left on the street. All this was only 3 or 4 breaths away, and some UN soldiers hadn't reacted yet, but Wokuo was in danger, and almost died under Xiao Xiang's sword. Xiaoxiang has learned internal strength since he was a child, not only learning horse riding skills, but also Jianghu martial arts. He may not be able to compare with Wo Kuo when it comes to fighting in battle, but in a solo fight like this, even 5 Wo Kuo are no match for Xiaoxiang. Because he is good at Kung Fu, while Wo Kuo is only good at horseback Kung Fu, which is used for fighting. With the protection of horses and guards, Wo Kuo dodged a few swords, and faced the little bear face to face for a few moves. He always felt that something was wrong. At this moment, he finally remembered when he saw the cold eyes of the little bear. Wo Kuo trembled in his heart, gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Chi Heiran." Little Xiang has strong inner strength, he can hear the other party's voice even if it is low. He chuckled and said, "Uncle Naji has misidentified the person, I am not Prince Rong, I am his son." Wo Kuo hates it even more, he suffered a loss in Chi Heiran's hands, should he still suffer in his son's hands? Thinking about it this way, Wo Kuo's attack is more fierce in his hands, but his martial arts are not as good as when he is powerful, it is useless. Xiaoxiang speeds up his attack and knocks down the 2 guards around him, and before the other guards have time to catch up, he dodges to him with a backhand sword on his neck. The little bear said loudly, "Do you want to do it again?" Nahe and the guards had red eyes, but they had to stop, and were soon tied up by Yuan Jiajin and the guards. At this time, Wo Kuo had lost nearly 1/3 of his manpower. Nahe looked at the buildings on both sides, and then at the horses that were forced to stand still. He couldn't help stamping his feet and sighed, the conspiracy of the Han people actually started early. If they were outside the city, even at the open city gate, as long as they had horses, they could escape. They are warriors on the prairie, and their horses are like their own 2 legs. However, the opponent chooses to be in the center of the houses. There is only one street here. As long as they surround them, the horses will not be able to run even if they want to. A horse warrior who has fought 100 battles, and he doesn't know how to do light work, he can't jump over so many houses to escape for his life. Wo Kuo obviously thought of this too. He looked at the little bear with red eyes and asked, "Since when did you recognize me and start plotting against me?" Little Xiang said frankly, "I recognized you the first time I saw you, and of course it was calculated from the beginning." Thinking that he was found out so early, and that he was planted in the hands of 2 yellow-mouthed children, Wo Kuo was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Little Xiang looked at the blood on his mouth, and resolutely stopped angering him. What if he was so angry? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1231. Wo Kuo and others were escorted back to the government office, and the carriage and other things were also taken back to the government office. Zhou Ying, the prefect of Weizhou City, was waiting behind Xiaobao, sweating profusely. The imprisoned Wo Kuo stopped in his tracks, glanced at Xiaoxiang, who was no longer wearing makeup, and then at Xiaobao, and burst out laughing when he thought of the news he had heard about Diqi's royal family. He staggered 2 steps and said, "So it's you, it turned out to be you. Qi Chen, Qi Wenchen. The current crown prince, I would have known, I would have known." If he had known that he would have been taken captive when he was in the important border town, with Qi Xiaoyuan's love for his son, why worry about the big things not going to happen? But now that he has become the victim of the 2 children, Wo Kuo suppressed emotions tumbling again, and he spit out another mouthful of blood. Xiaobao, who was about to speak, could only suppress the words to his mouth, and signaled to Wo Kuo, who was in custody, to drag him down quickly. What if Emperor De Yuan was really angry to death? Seeing Xiaobao belittle him so much, Wo Kuo felt even more angry, his blood surged, and he fainted decisively. Everyone in the courtyard was silent. Xiaobao looked at everyone innocently, he really didn't do anything. That's what's scary, Your Highness. The others also silently looked back at His Royal Highness. It was Zhou Ying who broke the deadlock and went forward to greet Xiao Xiang. Is the prince not injured? Zhou Ying felt like a dream today. Almost every second there seemed to be thunder ringing in his ears. If not for his good heart, maybe he wouldn't be able to live today. First, some guards brought a young man to show the crown prince's seal, saying that the crown prince had come in person, and before he could recover, the crown prince told him that the Emperor De Yuan had come to his small town, and that the son of the Prince Rong had already escaped. To catch. Zhou Ying was startled and angry for a while. What made him angry was that Emperor De Yuan actually treated Daki as his back garden. If an accident happened, not only him, but his whole family would not be able to settle down. If His Highness the Crown Prince hadn't suppressed him, he would have brought the Yamen servants to help out. So when I saw the bear, I asked him if he was injured. Little Xiang snorted proudly, it's just a few thieves, I don't take it seriously. Zhou Ying thought to himself, luckily the Emperor De Yuan passed out, otherwise he would have vomited blood again after hearing these words. The majestic emperor of a country would be called a thief. Xiao Bao had something to say to Xiao Xiang, and told Zhou Ying, Master Zhou, go and arrange for the Emperor De Yuan and his staff. After all, he is the king of a country, and he should be given the respect he deserves. Don't leave anything for others. As for the others, they will be held separately. Zhou Ying quickly responded. Xiao Bao pulled Xiao Xiang to look at the things that were searched, and when he saw the gold in the car, Xiao Xiang curled his lips and said, it seems that De Yuan is really short of money, and the emperor came here for such a small amount of money. It may not be so little money, Xiaobao said. I asked Zhou Ying when you went to arrest people, and he said that there was no record of gold or silver mines in Weizhou city in the files left by the kingdom of Jin. By 1 year, even De Qi didn't have time to explore the mine, so how could he know the exact address? Xiaobao calmly said, since we have caught him, we can't let him become a useless chess piece. Let Zhou Ying treat him with good food and drink for the past 2 days. Let's not go to see him yet, and wait until we get more weight. Besides, the letter from the emperor has almost arrived, so let's get rid of those people in the gold mine outside the city before we talk about it. Little Xiang was gearing up and said, shall I personally lead the troops to attack? You still have to protect me. Xiaobao didn't want Xiao Xiang to go, took his hand and said, who knows how many nails he put in our Daki? It's better for you to stay with me during this time, lest they bounce. Little Xiang thought about it, and began to follow Xiaobao's side every step of the way. Xiaobao just wanted to hold Xiao Xiang back and not let him go into danger. After all, fighting is different from fighting, and it is said that the gold mine is easy to defend and difficult to attack. It is to rescue Wo Kuo who is trapped. And the noble Xiaobao was their first hostage choice, so his room was attacked for 2 nights in a row. People can hurt him. It was also because he slept well with Little Bear by his side, so he was in good spirits these 2 days. On the contrary, because Zhou Ying was worried that he would not sleep well for 2 days in a row, he kept wandering around the two of them with 2 dark circles under his eyes. Both Xiaobao and Xiao Xiang were apologetic, so they persuaded him, why don't Mr. Zhou change his schedule, rest during the day and work at night? After all, no matter how daring an assassin is, he wouldn't have the guts to come in broad daylight. How could Zhou Ying dare to sleep? She lowered her head and said, Your Highness and Shizi have not finished the orders, how can you dare to sleep during the day? Xiaobao and Xiao Xiang were even more sorry, and comforted, Master Zhou worked hard for 2 more days, and the matter will be almost over when Yuan Jiajin takes down the people on the gold mine. Yuan Jiajin arrived on the afternoon when Wo Kuo was captured. General Yuan originally wanted to lead the troops here, but thought that Emperor De Yuan was here. If something unexpected happened, Daki and De Yuan might have another fierce battle. It is a frontier fortress, and a 200,000 army cannot live without a marshal, so the eldest grandson Yuan Bai can only be ordered to lead the troops. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang asked the scouts to take him to the gold mine after seeing each other. The people in the gold mine obviously knew that their master was taken, so they made preparations early, but even if the gold mine was easy to defend and difficult to attack, the opponent only had about 2,000 people. Yuan Bai brought 20,000 people, and only ordered 10,000 soldiers and horses went to surround the gold mine. Because the two little masters said that time was not urgent, he slowly surrounded and attacked upwards to minimize casualties. Today, Yuan Bo sent back 2 small victories, and he estimated that he should be able to win the gold mine in 2 days. And Zhou Ying was not idle here, and began to investigate the gold and silver mines in Weizhou City. Even if Wu Kuo silenced all the insiders back then, many people have heard about the gold and silver mines in Weizhou City, especially those old government servants who used to work in the government office of the Kingdom of Jin. I don't know where the gold mines and silver mines are, but I've heard of them, not to mention those relatives who are absent from work. There are always people who slip through the net. It becomes clear after inquiring. Xiaobao suspects that Wu Kuo is not only doing this to Weizhou City, but he may also hide gold and silver mines in other cities and counties. It is unknown how many such teams there are. He simply used the Crown Prince's seal to order the counties north of Zhongdu and south of Dating Mansion to thoroughly investigate the gold and silver mines within their jurisdiction. I don't know if I don't check it. I was shocked when I checked it. The news that the government gave back at the beginning was that there were no gold and silver mines in the jurisdiction. In such a large area between Zhongdu and Datingfu, none of the 23 counties have gold and silver mines. Who is it? So Xiaobao simply ordered them to ask the old man left by the previous dynasty, and Zhou Ying was in charge of this matter. There have been many assassins in the past 2 days, and he has to assist the guards in tracking down the assassins, and also has to deal with the news gathered from all over the place, so he is very busy. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1232. All the counties have received information feedback. Although the location and specific quantity of the minerals have not been found out, Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang have already understood most of Wakuo's strategy. It is impossible for the other party to remember so many gold and silver mines in their minds. They probably have a map or something. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang have great confidence in interrogating these things, because Wakuo is in their hands, and he is the emperor. Is there anything more important than life and the right to get it? And Xiaobao finally waited for Qi Xiaoyuan's instructions. Qi Xiaoyuan only had 2 instructions for them. First, De Qi and De Yuan should not go to war at this time. Second, he will send Li Zhang to help. Li Zhang used to be Wu Kuo's sworn brother and was his prime minister. No one in this world knows the situation of Wu Kuo and De Yuan better than him. Letting him deal with Wu Kuo is like poking the other party's heart. However, for Wu Kuo, who almost killed his younger brother, Qi Xiaoyuan said that he was not at all guilty of stabbing with the knife. On the 4th day after Wu Kuo was arrested, Yuan's army lived up to everyone's expectations and invaded the gold mine, killing 1,300 enemies and capturing 868 people. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang went to see Wu Kuo with the battle report. Wu Kuo was arranged in a small yard in the backyard of the magistrate's house, right next to Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang's, but although they were close neighbors, they hadn't seen each other in the past 4 days. In 4 days, Wu Kuo lost a lot of weight and his face was haggard. This was one of the biggest crises he encountered in his life. He looked at the 2 teenagers silently for a while, then grinned and said, "It's true that the blue is better than the blue. You are so powerful at such a young age. I don't know if your father can sleep peacefully. Is this to sow discord?" Little Xiang looked at him contemptuously. "Do you think our Daki and your Daywan-like brothers have been fighting each other endlessly?" Xiaobao patted Xiaoxiang on the shoulder, turned his head and smiled at Wu Kuo. His Majesty the Emperor who can capture De Yun will avenge fourth uncle. Of course my father and fourth uncle are sleeping soundly, but His Majesty left after a long time in day one. I don't know if your brother can sleep peacefully. Wo Kuo closed his eyes slightly and did not speak. Xiaoan and Xiao Xiang showed him the good news, and said with a smile, all the people your Majesty put in the gold mine have been taken down, and some of them admit that you are hiding more than one mine, and I ordered all the prefectures and counties they all started to investigate the minerals under their jurisdiction, and this investigation has to admire His Majesty's foresight. Wo Kuo closed his eyes tightly, pursed the corners of his mouth tightly and did not speak. He knew that the chess piece he had buried in advance was useless. Even if De Qi couldn't find those minerals for a while, he could still find out by sending people to conduct a large-scale search. And under martial law, it is impossible for him to think about mining in the dark under the lights. Wo Kuo has never been so frustrated for a moment. It would be fine if he was defeated by Qi Ziyuan or Qi Heiran, but he was deceived by their sons. These are 2.5 teenagers. Could it be that De Yun deserved to be crushed by De Qi and unable to turn over? Xiaobao didn't give the other party any time to think, and said straight to the point, it's not difficult for us Daqi to raise up a Day One emperor again. I believe your brothers are very happy to cooperate with Daqi, right? As long as Day One has your Majesty, you have only one end. If you want to avoid this from happening, you can only cooperate with us. Wo Kuo sneered, the Han people are cunning, my brothers are not stupid, they will not be manipulated by you. Xiaobao smiled calmly, De Qi, don't want to manipulate Emperor De Yun, I just want to cooperate with him. The border between our two countries is long, and the years of war have made the people miserable. What you need is food and salt. With tea, we Daqi can satisfy you. Isn't a friendly deal more popular than a war? No one will give you benefits regardless of remuneration. No matter how much you Han people pay, you will only go back 100 times. My brother is not a fool. But what benefit is more attractive than making him the emperor of an empire? Xiaobao smiled harmlessly, if the emperor doesn't believe it, why not stay in Daqi for a few more days and wait until I get in touch with your brother? Besides, but at that time, my royal father may not choose you again. After all, you have hurt my fourth uncle, you must know that my royal father loves my fourth uncle very much. Wo Kuo choked, staring at Xiaobao's eyes almost bleeding. Both Xiaobao and Xiao Xiang felt that he was a bit ignorant. Your life is in our hands, what else can you do with Zhou? Xiao Xiang directly pulled Xiaobao up, let's go. Isn't it just a matter of spending more time? At worst we just stay for a while, why should you be angry with him? Wo Kuo almost vomited blood, you guys have been irritating me. Okay, when did I give you anger? It's just that little bear didn't wait for him to say this, and rushed out like the wind, pulling Xiaobao. For 2 days in a row, Wo Kuo didn't see the two teenagers, and his food got worse and worse. Looking at the meal with only one dish and one soup, Wo Kuo became confused. After he was arrested, he has been entertained all the time. Apart from not being able to leave this house, the food he eats is very delicate. The 3 meals a day are at least 4 dishes and 1 soup. Therefore, although the Prince of Daqi did not come to see him, although he was his own, the situation is worrying, but I know that I have not completely come to a dead end. But now his treatment has dropped, and it is after a dispute with the other party. Wo Kuo has always been suspicious, and he was locked in a room alone for 6 days, and even the person who brought him food was dumb, which shows that his mood is getting more and more anxious. Could it be that Qi Wenchen and the others really went to contact his brother? He didn't think his brothers could resist the temptation of the throne, even he couldn't. And once they get in touch, as the former emperor, he has only one end. For the sake of hegemony, Wo Kuo even kills all his brothers. How can he be a person who accepts his fate easily? He was unwilling to fail at this, so Wo Kuo gritted his teeth, and finally opened the door and asked to see Qi Wenchen. Xiaobao waved back and said to the little bear with a smile, "You see, I am right, just let him hang out and he will be fine." Little Xiong pouted, "Wouldn't it be better to just change to another emperor?" Xiaobao patted him on the head and said, "What a fool, do you think he would listen to us if he was replaced? Let me ask you, what would you do if you were his brother?" Little Xiong rolled his eyes and said, "I will announce to the world that our emperor was killed by Da Qi, call on the soldiers to avenge the former emperor, and then ascend the throne as a matter of course. Yes, if we push Wo Kuo out at that time, the other party can say that this is a fake, a conspiracy of the Han people, and the real emperor has already been killed by Daqi, and he is already the emperor. Really, in order to prevent civil turmoil in Day 1, we can only accept this statement, and the Wo Kuo in our hands will really be useless at that time." Xiaobao said, "Wo Kuo may not have thought of this, he should I also know that this is the best result for Da Yuan, but since he didn't commit suicide, he didn't want to sacrifice his own interests to make Da Yuan whole.